And let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen tamche dewatang dewe jutang den pa juchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang minra wa juchik, nering chak tang nitan trawe tang nom chempo lane pa juchik. Jen tamche dewatang dewe jutang den pa juchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindrawa juchik, nering chak tang nitan trawe jempo lane pa juchik. Semchen tamche dewa tang dewe jutang den pa juchik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindrawa juchik, nering chak tang trawe tang nom chempo lane pa juchik. So, good evening, everybody. I want to see, I saw Lama Yeshe Rinpoche coming in, but I can't see you. Just let me see where you are, so I can say good evening, maybe on the other one. Any long? Oh, there you are. Okay. So I'm going to put you, I want to put you on the other side so we can see you. Annie Lama, I think I'm going to make you a co-host, and then that will keep you in one place. I think that will be the best. Just, oh, there. Wait a minute. It's so difficult with all these people. Good evening, Lama.
Good evening. I can see George there.
You know what, Lama? You can't believe I didn't even put this on the newsletter, but it went out via the grapevine. So tonight, we've got Zimbabwe, we've got Cape Town, we've got absolutely everybody, Kensington, Randburg, we've got the whole lot here. And I'm wondering how you magnetize people. I don't get this kind of turnout, but you do. And here you are, and everybody's so excited when they can even see you for a minute. So
well, I didn't do anything. So I did say it will be useful. So you can put me all the things they want to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer it.
Well, let me say to you that the reason this came about was because I've been doing a series with my group on meditation, non-meditation, contemplation, and pondering. And so what I've been teaching them all the time is that everything that we do is to come back to your nature of mind. So then it just dawned on me, the best thing I could do, the best practice I could do was to actually ask you to visit, because I want to ask you a whole lot of questions, because I know you live in your nature of mind. And I thought to myself, what's so important here is for people to see what a different life you have when you do live in your nature of mind, when you live in Sem Ni rather than Sem, the human part of the mind. So my questions are all based about living, because I've been teaching them also about Longchenpa and all of these people saying, these masters saying that you've got to take your meditation practice into your everyday life. So my first question for you, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, is I want you to answer how true or false this particular statement is for you. So this is my statement. The more difficulties, the greater the opportunity to surrender to your Buddha nature. So I want to ask you if that's true or false.
Well, it's deadly easy because people think it can't be easy. It's too easy. because they want to have all this talking, explanation, but that won't get you anyway. So it's like come back to here now with fullest awareness. So this belongs to nobody. Awareness of being in the present, not in the past, not in the future, but being in the present. You're trying to maintain that state of mind as long as you can. So in between, normally, if you're a beginner, you may not be able to do more than 5 2 seconds. So you can do some other visualization or chanting or reciting, but then come back again and trying to see if you can build upon this. So it's like block of wall. So gradually, you increase your ability to be in the present as long as you can. That is the idea.
So when you were on retreat, I know, how did you develop, how did you stop your mind from distracting you in terms of, I know that you had building going on outside, you had all kinds of things going on outside and dust and everything. And then the human mind, part of the mind goes, this is terrible, I can't do it with this noise. So how did you stop that from happening?
Yes, you're remembering to remember it's nothing more than illusion. So you don't chase your illusion, trying to come back to again. So even if you hear noise or even you have a dust coming, but that is your own projection, see. You have to say, okay, who is saying there is a dust? Look, and who is saying that? Where is it out or is it in? So you will not find anyway. Same like this to anything. So it's like a lot of investigation in your own mind, and you end up that there's nothing you have to do to achieve anything. That's why Buddha mind is not yours, not mine, it's not Buddha's. We all have that potential. Doesn't matter you're beggar or you're low caste or you're king, you're emperor. This Buddha mind exists with all sentient beings.
Yeah, I agree with you. So when you were really sick, and I mean, I know you've gone through some really sick times when it was touch and go for you. How did you, how did you actually describe, how would you describe your state of mind? Because whenever I asked you how you were, you always said, if my mind's okay, I'm okay. That's what you used to tell me.
I was talking to my doctor. He said, corona disease and diabetes are very bad together because it just brings all the type of pain, suffering, illusion. So when I was stuck in hospital, something went wrong.
That's okay, I think. Yeah.
All right. Do
No.
we need to do something?
No, I'm
We
sure
can't
it's fine.
see you now, but if you can see us, I think you're still there, Rinpoche, because this is your little picture, so
Okay.
you're fine.
So in the hospital, it was so tiny. It's like a form of communist prison camp. And nobody speaks English. And I was having hallucination. But all I remember is be center, be center. So I tried to maintain this in center, and I did not suffer anymore than remembering to maintain, be in the center of everything.
It's unbelievable because we all try. That's what I'm trying to teach them. Then we all try and then we go back to the fixating and the grasping and the analyzing and everything. And I know that you don't. And that's very, very important to me. Now, what about fear? Fear and the nature of mind. I mean, I remember we were once walking through at Cape Mountain Retreat, and there was this unbelievable dog, and they told us, these dogs, don't go near there. And I remember I begged you, I said, let's not go that way. They've told us not to go that way. But you walked that way, these growling dogs came, and then you just said, Om Mani Padme Hum, and the dog just sat down and never even moved. I couldn't believe my ears. So what about fear and the nature of mind?
Human beings, we exist within fear and hope. So fear and hope, you learn to renounce. So as you say, you're teaching all this. Teaching is just information, but they have to put it up to really get it by doing more down-to-earth practice to see if you can get there. So most of this job has to be done by students who listen to you. You can't give it to them. They have to aim that.
So when you say, somebody just asked, when you say be more in the center, can you explain that a little more? That was somebody's question.
You are the center. Whoever you consider, it's like you call I Melanie, but the Melanie doesn't exist. It is your name identification. So then you have to go beyond Melanie, but you will see there's nothing beyond Melanie. So that's why I call Buddhism saying nature of everything is emptiness. Because whichever way you look, there isn't anything called I. When you see there's no I, if it is emptiness, then there's no fear. See, fear doesn't exist. There's a one practice called Zume, Dame, Tame, Rome, Zame. This is called nobody, no sound, or no sense. This is, none of this exists. That is simply having recognition of this physical form. It allows us to have that 5 senses.
Oh my goodness, we're all a long way from it. Okay, but I want to ask you also, I've been talking a lot to them about joyfulness and lightheartedness, not only in your life, but also in your practice. And I know that you are a very joyful person. Can you please, we want some of your secrets. We want some.
There's no secret. You have to help yourself to be. If you are a miserable person, you say, this is a bad old silly habit. I want to be joyful and happy person. So you have to change your course to become more joyful, happy, and a more helpful human being than being miserable. So this is something you have a choice and you can change it quite easily with good effort.
But do you think you had a joyful nature even before you went into your nature of mind and your Buddhism and everything? Because don't you think some people have got a joyful nature and some people have got a very, very morose.
You read my life story. I was most destructive. I was most careless. I wasn't anything to be special. But good thing is I have got the right teacher, right brother. They did not allow me to fall down. They just forced me all the way. So after that, gradually, I reached certain point. Now I can afford to do that.
No,
But
it's
you have a Guru Rinpoche, he guides you all the way. So why are you worrying? You can, Yogi will chase you up there.
I know, and somebody asked here, please can Lama Yeshe tell us about work and productivity? How do we create a healthy balance with meditation and inner life and having a very busy working life? And I think that's very important because that's what masters are teaching about, taking it into your working life,
So it's all depend on your state of mind. If you get very calm, you're called cool person, nice, kind, and happy person, very easy to work with. You can do many jobs very quickly and very successfully. Or if you're a stressful human being, doesn't matter how many hours you put, you make more mistakes, you make more upset to other people, then you can achieve everything. So all depend on your state of mind.
But your state of mind is always in touch with your Buddha nature. I've seen it because sometimes when I'm moaning about something and I say to you, oh, this is difficult or this is hard or whatever the case is, you know, when I'm moaning about it, you've got an expression that you say. And your expression is you go to me, and yet, and then you give me another view, another explanation of things when you say, and yet. But I'm trying to get people to understand that once they touch that Buddha nature, it automatically comes through you, the joy, the spontaneity, everything that you've got. And I think that when I look at you, it's always like that. Even your patience with this temple, I can't believe that you're so patient. I would have given up long ago to build the temple. You just sat there looking over the hills, waiting for things to happen. Teach us how you
You cannot give that to your own students. They have to aim this by working hard to bring a stable, joyful, very tolerant lifestyle. And then they can achieve everything you are now asking me. Tell that there's nothing any teacher can give you. Even Dalai Lama can't give it to you or anybody. You have to earn it by remembering to have this certain state of mind.
But do you think that with this non-meditation, it's taking your awareness into every single situation of your life? I mean, there are lots of people that just don't manage to do a long sitting practice. And I'm asking you that because I think it's really important to develop that awareness and develop that ability to still tune in, even if you're not doing a long practice.
Yeah, that's called Jinjok and Nyam means when you're meditating, you're only meditating to bring this mindfulness. Jinjok means it must follow you wherever you go, whatever you do, mindfulness or awareness. You have to achieve this both. Otherwise, if you can't achieve this, you won't get anywhere. So let it follow you.
Let it follow you, yeah. And your dark retreats, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, everybody asks me about your dark retreats. Of course, I wasn't there. I only can tell them what you've told me. But what was the most important thing? I remember you telling us straight after you came out of one dark retreat that you actually saw this pearly light in front of you. Tell us a little bit. I mean, you spent 7 weeks, 3 times in total darkness. Can you tell us?
That cannot be explaining. What I said is, if you are total darkness for a long period of time, you can really start to see things more easily. But just being in darkness, if you don't have a control over your emotional anxiety, that's where people become mad. But you have a full, stable, and calm and relaxed mind, then it can produce a result in the darkness. More than that, I can't explain to anybody anything. They have to do their own ritual experience because everybody go through different experience.
Yeah, but did you feel confident and stable when you were in the dark for all those weeks?
No, of course, because I've done one before, then another before. So then I know I have no fear of going into darkness. Doesn't matter whatever happens, I see it's nothing more than illusion.
Well, I wish we could see that it was illusion as well. It really help. So does anybody want to ask anything? I've got a whole lot of questions, but I think, you know, what I learn from Lama Yeshe Rinpoche all the time, and I have a lot of contact with him, is that
I only have 5 minutes, then I have to go.
okay.
Yeah.
So anybody who wants to ask a question, and then I'll discuss it afterwards. But it's
Yes,
really,
yes,
this is important because
yes, yes.
especially that we've been talking a lot about emotions and the Buddha nature. So does anybody want to ask anything? Maybe you could just give us a comment or two on, you know, all those emotions that come up, depression, anxiety, everything that comes up, and how you look at it, how you look at it, how you don't see it as permanent. And yet the mind goes back, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, and picks it up again and again.
Because the Western psychologists are very clever and they're able to name all these different names. But what is name for different things? But if you look into, there isn't none of this exists. So you are able to label so many emotion, anxiety, depression, unhappiness. All this is nothing more than label. So you should stop giving these labels. And what?
Stop looking at all the different emotions.
Yes, emotions, and they come back to your mind because they don't.
They do. And Eric, ask your question. Unmute yourself, Eric, and ask your question that you want to ask.
Are we able to attain the perfect awakening of a Buddha without achieving shamatha?
Without the shamatha, without the knowledge of Buddha's actually teaching, you can't, because we call first study means you need to know all the meanings and how and the way and what, then shamatha, then meditating, bring in every human being have a same potential. Okay?
So does that answer it, Eric? Okay. And
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
And Philip said, yeah, our emotions are not our mind. That sounds like equanimity. Well, we'd love to have equanimity. It's really hard to have equanimity when your lights are going off all the time and everything's happening. It's hard to keep that equanimity. And that's what I've been trying to say, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, that it's so important that you live and allow that nature of mind to go through you and allow yourself to tune in with awareness. But people find it really difficult.
Yes, don't label it, don't chase it, don't reject it, and just come back to so-called I, and then they will be fine.
To all here, does anyone want to say anything? You've got 1 minute, and then Lama Yeshe Rinpoche is going to go.
Yes, then I am off.
Because I know by the evenings he's very tired because he only eats in the early morning and then he doesn't eat again until the next morning or something. So I know by now at night it's better to get him in the morning. Then he's fresh and alive. Now I think he wants to go to bed. But Lama Yeshe, anyone quickly? You've got 1 minute. Hey?
Mel, sorry, my video is very dark. I have a question. So with the kiddies class that I do, I talk to them obviously about Buddha nature and also about how there's no good or bad people and like that labeling that we do consistently. But I also talk to them a lot about feelings and emotions, and how a lot of time the actions, the negative actions are coming from that place of the emotions that we have. I sort of want to know if I should not be sort of talking to my daughter about emotion and rather about finding that center, that Buddha nature, and more focus on that.
So many names and all these labels to your daughter.
Yeah.
Very simple is learn to be very kind, very nice, very helpful, very, very tolerant person, and you will achieve everything. Simple. That's what you teach to your daughter.
Okay, thank you so much, Lama Yeshe.
All right, Anna.
So
Okay.
Lama Yeshe, thank you very, very much. And please stay healthy and come back to us very soon. We're waiting for you. And we're waiting for your temple. Thank you very, very much, Annie Lamo. Can you say hello to everyone, Annie Lamo? Quick. Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for bringing him. I know it's late and tiring at this time of the day, so thanks a million for bringing him. Are you going to... Okay. I'm sorry that I can see tonight that he's tired in the evening. He's much better to get him in the morning when he's really fresh after his eating. By this time of night, I know he'll only come for 20 minutes or whatever the case is. But it's beautiful to hear that. And I want to go back. Kaylee, let's just put you on mute so that we can do it. So those of you that want to go, you're welcome to go. I'm going to go on teaching the stuff that I've been teaching them on meditation, non-meditation, contemplation, and pondering. We've been doing a whole lot of on it. And I think that what he's saying, it's such a beautiful thing for me to actually be with him, because he's always got an answer for me in terms of his Buddha nature. And that's what I was really trying to get tonight, that he actually lives it through the stress, through the impatience, through everything. He always lives it. And that sentence he always says to me, and yet he means the way when I'm moaning about something, he goes, and yet, and then he gives me the view from the top of the mountain. So it's absolutely amazing. He'll look at it. If I say, why is this happening and why is that happening, he'll give me another viewpoint, absolutely and entirely. And that is really very useful to me, because he'll always see it as a blessing rather than anything else. So tonight, I want my group to just remember the most important points of the 4 techniques that we've been looking at. A lot of the techniques: meditation, non-meditation, contemplating, and pondering. And what we're doing in all 4 is returning our whole being back to the state of that primordial, of that pure luminous awareness. And whether we do formal or informal meditation practices, we find it a joy and an inspiration in any practice we do, because we're getting used to allowing that awakened nature to come spontaneously and effortlessly through us. And tonight I want to look at a particular practices called Senzin. But before, I want to, and how we incorporate this, but I want to tell you a beautiful story of Milarepa, which gives us a real understanding of everything I was asking Lama Yeshe. So once, Mila was challenged by a black magician of the pre-Buddhist faith in Tibet. And he challenged Milarepa that through his magic power, he would be able to reach the summit of Mount Meru or Mount Kailash, whichever you want to call it. And Mila replied that he could do the same. Let us see, said the magician, who will reach it first. And he started to climb up. It was very early in the morning. The sun had not yet risen. And Mila said he would rest a little. And those who'd been present when the magician challenged him grew worried and implored him to hurry after his adversary. He was unruffled and didn't move from his rest. The magician was almost at the top of Mount Meru and was jeering at Mila when the first ray of the sun touched the summit of the holy mountain. Mila had been waiting for this moment. Through the mighty power of his concentration, he immediately became one with the ray, and before the magician realized what had happened, the figure of Milarepa went on the ray, and reached the top of Mount Meru or Kailash. Hello, he called out to the magician who was panting and puffing below him. Don't exert yourself. And the magician, who saw himself defeated, got such a shock that he dropped his magic drum, his damaru. It leapt down in big bounds, and each time it bounced against the ice dome of Kailash, it emitted a loud tone and left a deep cut on the surface of the dome. Tang, tang, tang it went, to the great hilarity of all the onlookers, and up to the present day, a perpendicular line of stair-like impressions are to be seen, forming a vertical axis on the southern face of the dome of Kailash. Now, the moral of the story was the difference of the black magician who was working with his ego and his human mind, and his whole thing was win, defeat, win and defeat were his whole philosophy, where Miller was completely in touch with his nature of mind, and his was just there to show what was possible if you really did touch your nature of mind. And the steps that actually came on Mount Kailash from the magician's drum is also symbolic of when you go on the path of ego, it's really important to do it one step at a time. And so, but Miller didn't need that. Once he had achieved what he'd achieved, he could just be there by absolute thought form. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful story that is really important. And Dajjal Rinpoche, in his one Hung poem, it's called the Hung poem, he was sitting at the bottom of a mountain, and he really wanted practical instructions for when the wild animals came and touched him and did things to him. He wanted instructions for that. And Miller and Guru Rinpoche gave him the Hung poem. So it's quite a long thing, but I just want to say, because Hung is one of the things we're going to practice tonight. But he actually said, Hung, just a part of it. Do you understand that there is no practice of meditation? Hung, inwardly, there is the bondage of grasping at the eye. Hung, outwardly, there is grasping and clinging to objects. And just by the way, the Hungs are there because the Hungs dissolve everything. So as he's talking, even his sentences, he's dissolving. He says, Hung, outwardly, there is grasping and clinging to objects. Hung, meditation in between is immaterial. Hung, do you understand that the gateways of the outer and inner conditions obscure the face, Hung, of the great perfection of samsara and nirvana? He says, Hung, first. Now, this is where, Eric, this comes your investigation. First, he says, you investigate and understanding will come. Hung, next, by meditating, experiences will arise. Hung, finally, by resting, realization will come. By resting, realization will come, which I found absolutely amazing. And then he says, Hung, once realization has occurred, it's non-dual with simultaneous liberation. So what we were talking about over these last sessions is resting that mind. So going through some of the steps of meditation, but coming back to resting. And once you rest, if you listen carefully to what Lama Yeshe Rinpoche was saying, he says, I realized that nothing was solid. I realized that nothing was permanent. I realized that the I wasn't a very important thing. I realized that the I was not your identity. And when he said this was so important because Eric sent me this lovely little clip of Alan Wallace on experiencing suffering. And in this, Alan Wallace, it was called Essential Suffering. And he was speaking about the 3 types of suffering. So there's the suffering of suffering, where things happen to you all the time, the suffering of change, which we all know.
The power's just gone off. I think that's why Mel's disappeared. She should be back in a few minutes.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, it's gone off on my side. We're in the same area. So, yeah.
Mel, you must unmute.
Can you hear me, everybody? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay. Sorry, so
Yes.
sorry. There's a gap between the inverter and the electricity going off, the load shedding and the inverter. And he's been here the whole day today, and I thought he fixed it, but it's not fixed. It's got to go from Holland to here. I don't know. It's a very complex process. I'm really, really sorry. So just to go back to Alan Wallace's thing. So he was talking about the 3rd kind of suffering, which is the suffering, the existential suffering, the suffering of conditioned existence, which is really we as human beings have that suffering of conditioned existence. And he says, human beings suffer from conditioned existence suffering, and he gets one sentence that makes us understand. And then we're going to do the Zins, which are the particular practice which helps us cut through to get to that nature of mind. So he says, because of our skandhas are our body, form, feelings, which we were talking about, emotions, feelings, perceptions, habits, and consciousness. Because of those 5, he says there's a Tibetan sentence which, when translated, says, closely held contaminated skandhas. Closely held contaminated skandhas, which is such an interesting thing, because what it actually means is we identify with all our feelings. Me, I look terrible, I'm happy, I'm depressed, I feel awful, whatever we feel. And he says we never say this sentence. What we really need to say is this sentence, which he says, I'm temporarily experiencing the rising of the feeling. I think that's such a, I'm temporarily experiencing the rising of a feeling. Now that would really change things. If you were depressed or angry with someone and you actually stopped and you said, I'm temporarily experiencing the rising of a feeling, it would be absolutely amazing. And eventually it would happen spontaneously. So we're trying to make ourselves intrinsically aware and awake and see the truth of our thoughts and feelings. Now these Zin, it's got the word sem, which is the ordinary mind, SEMDZINS. These are exercises that we need to bring the mind to get the distinction between sem, the ordinary mind, and sem ni, the nature of mind. And I'm going to give you those differences into a minute. But we need to bring that into our immediate experience. The word sem zin means to hold or fixate. It comes from zin pa and the mind sem. So to hold or fixate, okay? And that's such an important thing, because what we do is we hold on to the emotions, we hold on to the feelings, hold on to who we hold on to that identity. And so we suffer. And so in these non-meditation exercises, we're trying very hard to actually change that completely, and not to fixate, but to is temporarily arising. And can I spell it? Sure. SEMDZINS, Zins. Somebody asked me. Okay. And for non-meditation, which means intrinsic awareness into your everyday activities of your life, to get that, the natural flow can be stopped by the natural flow of your ordinary mind, can be stopped by these Zins, because they hold the mind momentarily. And the window, when they hold the mind momentarily, the window to the nature of mind, when you are startled, opens up for a minute. And once it's opened up, then you can see the directly penetrating naked awareness. It's such an important thing, because we really need to change what we're doing. We need to change it completely and totally, so that we can take sem and absolutely shatter it, which I'm going to show you now. But just let's do a little bit of a comparison, just a quick one on sem, which is your ordinary human conditioned part of your mind, and sem ni, which is your nature of mind, and to do just a little chart that I did, okay? Using SEM, we work out everything. Using SEM-Ni, there's no working out. That's what Lama Yeshe was saying tonight. SEM, we need a happy life and no suffering. SEM-Ni, it's one taste for everything. And that's what I've been able to see from Lama Yeshe Rinpoche. I've seen him really, really, really sick. And I've said to him, how are you surviving? And he said, if my mind is okay, I'm okay. And he survives. He didn't tell too much tonight, but he's told me that he survives by actually taking all other people's sickness into himself while he's lying there in this terrible state. I mean, unbelievable, because that's what the nature of mind does. SEM is mostly external. SEM-Ni is all internal, but it has a bearing on the external, obviously. SEM, it works dualistically with attachment and aversion, you, me. And in SEM, there's absolutely no attachment, no duality, no solid, everything is one. SEM is dependent on the outcome and the circumstances. SEM-Ni, independent of the outcome and circumstances. All circumstances arise and just dissolve. SEM works with effort. SEM-Ni, effortless, it works through us. SEM, everything contrived, everything fabricated, everything created by us. SEM-Ni, everything spontaneous. Shame, so many people are having such difficulties with all the load shedding. It's really hard. Okay, SEM is mostly about the self and mostly about cause and conditions. SEM-Ni, mostly about others, no causes and conditions. It's all dreamlike. And SEM is all conceptual. SEM-Ni, not non-conceptual. Just the words to help us understand. SEM, all in the 3 times, past, present, and future. SEM-Ni, beyond the 3 times. Because, you know, we can come to the present moment and hold on to it, which is also no good. And when we look at this, I've got a whole lot of others, but it doesn't really matter. It's just to give you an idea of how we start surrendering to that beautiful nature of mind, and then things happen spontaneously. And the only thing I can say to you is that my level of accepting things as they turn out, as they are, has changed completely. Even tonight, I thought, what happens if the thing goes off and Lama Yeshe Rinpoche is there? Well, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche wasn't there. And so he managed to come without it. And so it was all fine. So should I have a sleepless night over that? That's what we all do. When things are not going well in work, we have a sleepless night. We're worried. We really, really, really have to change that. And in these Senzins, they actually, Longchenpa gives 21 exercises. Now we're going to practice just a few, but the first 7, you'll be very pleased to know, Eric, are to calm the mind, okay? So they're kind of like shamatha, but a bit more drastic, okay? Then the second 7 are to discover the relationship between the body and mind. So in other words, our human mind is always attaching. And so we attach to the body, we attach to the emotions, we attach to the skandhas. And in these exercises, we start releasing. And then the last 7 are to discover the nature of our own condition. So let's try a couple of these. But first, you might want to say something or ask something or comment on something. I'm very happy, or something that you got from Lama Yeshe Rinpoche before we do some of the exercises. Anybody want to ask, say, speak and hold your peace?
I just want to say thank you. It's lovely. Even without the blanket he asked you to wear. I wonder what he was thinking when he saw you without it. But anyway, it's lovely even in its absence.
All the things, my shawl is here and in everything I've forgotten to put it on. And he gave it to me, so I should have had it on, but never mind, I'll put it now, Eric. Thanks. Anyone else? Anyone else? It's actually a very thin thing. It's not a blanket. Okay. Anyone else want to say something, comment, or what Lamayeshi said, or what you want to know, or how it is? Paul, it's nice to see you. Anybody want to say anything? Please.
Mel, I have one thing quick. With the first story you mentioned with Mila, it reminds me of another story I heard of from Dzongsa Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, where his father told him, "You're not going to attain enlightenment in this lifetime." And he looked at him surprised. And his father told him, "You suffer from something called rationalism." So with Mila Repa, the way we take things, we're so like rational and like logical and scientific. To think that we can in an instant appear at the top of the mountain is something we doubt. And so we go without. We can't even believe it.
Exactly.
And so we'll never receive it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
I remember that guy who could walk on water, you know, but the minute he doubted it, the human mind takes over. So, you know, it's amazing. I mean, these miracles are there, but it's so interesting because the masters never give us their miracles because they don't want to. That would be like ego. They only give it to us to try and demonstrate to us how beautiful it is when you live in your nature of mind. Eckhart, do you want to say something? It's so nice that you're back. No, okay. So would you like to do some of these exercises? Mart, Marcel, Nicola, you here. Anyone want to say anything or ask anything?
No, I just want to say it's so simple. It's so simple, but it's so difficult because of where we are, because of where we live, because of our conditioning. It's so simple that because of all of that, we can't see it. And even though it's so simple, we still have to put in the effort. So we still need to train our minds. Otherwise, because we can't just jump to that state of being or state or mind state or knowledge. It's like you finish school, but then you want to be a doctor. You can't just go, I'm a doctor. You got to work your way up to it. You've got to, there's a process. Although this process is not as defined as to be a doctor, you have to follow the steps. It's a lot more, I can't explain it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, it makes sense to me. But the point is that, you know, if you look at conditioning, if you look at the wheel of life and our conditioning, I mean, the conditioning has been happening for eons. Now, how do you decondition and then look in a different way? It does take time and practice. I wish it didn't, but it does take time and practice. I mean, Lamayeshi Rinpoche was in retreat for about 12, 14 years, okay, solidly. And then he didn't want to come out of retreat. He would have liked to stay there for all time. But his brother made him come out and made him run the monastery and everything else. So it's a very interesting thing. It does take time and practice. And it's also interesting for me that when I always keep diaries when I'm on retreat, like especially when I'm in India. And when I look at some of those comments and those perceptions that I get and those dreams that I get when I've taken that time out and I'm in retreat, and I really, really, really feel that we do have to practice. I wouldn't go a single day without long practicing. Sorry, that you cannot give it to your students, they have to work for it. Yeah, that's true, Lindiwe. They have to work for it. But what is very important is to understand that once you make that connection, and these semzins help you to just make that connection. And once you make the connection, and then another little connection, as Tulku Urgent says, and another little connection. And each time you make that little connection, it starts changing. It starts changing. And a lot of people say to me that they don't have the time to do any long practice. It's not about long practice. It's about aware practice, mindful practice. That's what it's about. And that's why this whole category came into the Ati Yoga of non-meditation or contemplation. Because actually with non-meditation, you don't have to sit in meditation. And I said to you last week when I was explaining to you, Tulku Urgen's shamatha and vipassana is completely different when you look at it at the top of the mountain. And he said, you can move. He said you can move Tai Chi movements. You can move your eyes as long as you don't move to distraction. And that's what we've got to learn to do. Because I watch all of us in the West. If the dog barks, I will go to the dog's barking, but what I'm doing in my practice will be lost. And I will go and fixate on the dog barking, which is not how it is. If I incorporated the dog's barking into my practice, there would be no problem. But it does take a lot of time and a lot of practice. Because what happens is, I don't know if you've seen how conditioning happens, but it's such an interesting thing, conditioning. Because, you know, if I do certain prayers that I recite in the morning, if I lose track because something distracts me, my mouth still says the prayers, you know. And then when I bring my awareness back, I'm already about 2 stages after where I left off. So I lost that whole thing. But my conditioning was that because I do it on a regular basis, you go on. And this is what you've got to understand, how much conditioning changes us. How conditioning, we're so conditioned. So what I'm trying to get with all these other practices is that you now start changing. You decondition your mind, fixating on things, picking them up, picking them up, picking them up. I was saying to somebody, go onto a clean page. Let it go. You're like a dog holding on to something. Let it go. Go back. Go to a clean page. That's done. That's over. And this is what's important now. But it's very difficult and it takes a lot of practice. So let's do first one of the calm state semzins, which you're like, Eric. So can we have, if it's at all possible, the white Tibetan letter, not with the rainbows, if you can. I'd appreciate that. Okay, so it actually should be a black thing with a white, but it doesn't matter. You could just imagine that this Tibetan letter is a white letter. You can imagine that, okay? And what we're doing with this category of exercise is similar to shamatha. You can discern when the thoughts are moving and distinguish this from your calm state. So fixate on, it should be the white Tibetan letter, but it doesn't matter. If you look very deeply, you'll be able to see it as a white Tibetan letter. And see this Tibetan R at the end of your nose, okay? And then you link the letter to your breathing. So as you breathe out, the letter goes out into space with each exhalation. And then as you breathe in, it returns to your tip of your nose, okay? And this fixation on the letter R, which should be a white letter R, and you can draw one for yourself, inhibits the arising of extraneous thought. So let's try it, everybody. So get into your meditative posture. You can do your 9 breaths, but we won't do it tonight because it's no time. And as you breathe in, breathe that letter in through the tip of your nose. And as you breathe out, exhale it and send the letter out. And just do your breathing like that. The tip of your nose. All in the nose breathing. P. Okay, now that P, you can take that off feed. I just wanted to do it without telling you first what it was. But P, you do it whenever you've got too many thoughts. It's another exercise, okay? You sound the syllable P-H-A-T. You can sound it for yourself. When you do the chirp practice, you go P, and then you do whatever it is. And the P, P-H-A-T, it's the two aspects of enlightenment. And Patrul Rinpoche loves you to use the P. So the PH is the means, and the TA is the wisdom. So the letter P, you actually put it, what happens is it cuts the attachment and it gives you a direct introduction to the knowledge of Rigpa, your actual awareness. It's a state, says Patrul Rinpoche, of emptiness and clarity. And he says, relax, don't follow thoughts, don't attempt to block them. Your breathing slows, your thoughts slow down, and your eyes don't move, because the movement of your eyes induces thoughts only much later when you are absolutely aware. And there's no room for the thoughts to arise. And as soon as the thoughts arise again, you go, P, and you cut through. It's a cut through, P-H-A-T, P. And he calls it startled awareness, or hadewa, okay, startled awareness. And he says it's a state of shock, and it's only an experience, but through this experience, we will reveal that nature of mind. As I said to you, the Zins are to just open you to the nature of mind. So go on with your breathing, everybody. Breathing in, she doesn't need to put the letter I, just imagine a white I. You're breathing in and you're breathing out. And as you're concentrating on this, the thoughts might accumulate. As soon as there's a thought, we won't hear you because you're on mute. You go, P. You shock yourself out of it and you start again. When you get tired, or when there are too many thoughts, you shout, P! And that startled shock comes into you. And whenever you're gripping onto a thought, whenever you're picking up again, why did that person do it to me? As you become aware that you're picking up that thought, you startle, P! You cut through it. And you'll find that when you give yourself a shock, you're actually in another state of mind. And there's another one. It's called the Senzin of the Heruka's joyful laughter. Now, what the Herukas do when they tell you something, when they go, oh, it's empty, and then they laugh, they go, ha ha. So what is suggested in these things is that every time it's a joyful laughter, when the Herukas are giving you the truth, at the end of the sentence, they'll go, ha ha. I mean, Dajjam Rinpoche writes about this all the time, ha ha. So when you tell somebody, you have this beautiful nature of mind, ha ha. And what Keith Dowman says is start with one ha and then increase it to 5. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Okay, try it, everybody. Try it. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha ha. It's a joyful, almost a mockery of what we do. These little senzins are very useful, truly, when you're meditating, because you go, this is difficult. Ha ha! So it actually cuts it away. You know, if you do any of your usual things and you go in, ha ha, it cuts it away. So the ha ha and the pe and the white Tibetan letter are all to be able to, well, the ha ha and the pe are to be able to wake you up. And then there's another one called, I'm just giving you them and you can try them out at home for a long time. The Senzin of the long and short hungs. Okay, now the hungs are very, very interesting because the hungs also cut through. And when you want to see that something isn't solid, I used to give it a tune. I used to go, home, 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 home. They're the blue hungs, the red hungs, all the different hungs. So when you're really having a hard time and you use this, you can use hung, very short, or you can use home. So what I used to do when I was on retreat with these hungs, I used to go like see the solid tree, and I used to go home, 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 home. You actually do it on the out breath, and it breaks down the things. These are actually wonderful, wonderful exercises because they actually take your conditioning and break it down. And it really, you can use them whenever you want because there are lots of people that can't just sit in formal meditation. And I told you, the Tulku Urgent says, once you do shamatha and vipassana, once you do it on the Ati Yoga level, you can move. You can take it with you in your day. You can do lovely movements. Your eyes can move as long as you keep that intrinsic awareness. You can walk, you can eat, you can still be meditating and you can go and do your daily things. You can go into your office and you can still keep that beautiful state of mind. And somebody talks to you and he says, come home and finish it at home, or go into your office and finish your beautiful hums or whatever you're doing. And when somebody really upsets you and you're clinging and you're grasping at the absolute, you're grasping at the solidity of what's happened to you, you can use any of these because they really, really, really are amazing things. So when you use that hum, so I find it very comforting when I'm really annoyed and I use that hum to break things down. I go, hum, 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 and I see everything just becoming non-solid if you do it for a whole lot of time. And then we've got the Senzin of what Keith Dowman talks about, the Senzin of ear consciousness. Now let's just try that. The ear consciousness is, so sit in your meditation, or you can do it when you're walking around, it doesn't matter, and focus your attention in the ear and relax. And thereby you will experience the samadhi of sound. So I'm going to not talk, and I want you to focus totally on your ears. And if you find that you can't hear the sound of samadhi, then take both your ears, take your 2 fingers, block them, the ears, and listen to the real samadhi of sound. Emaho, amazing, because we only hear the outer sound, and this is the inner sound. And when you hear the inner sound, you are in touch with your true nature, because all sounds are the sound. I've told you, when I asked Taisitu Rinpoche one day, I said to him, please tell me what the sound of samadhi is really about. And he said, well, I can't explain it. I said, just give me an idea when you hear the inner sound. And he said, well, when I go on an aeroplane, he said, I just put my head back at the back of the seat. He said, and I listen to the sound inside. And there it is. You know, these are all things we don't even know to bring into our lives. It's so exciting when you start listening to the inner sound, and when you start doing the horns. It is amazing what happens. There's some exercises where you actually take the horns up a stick and then down again to you, and it's hong, 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 hong. Absolutely amazing. It changes you. So what we're doing with these is we're taking the ordinary conditioning of the ordinary mind, and we're taking it into the inner part of the mind, the semni. And so we're getting used to all these things. So Fee, just let's do the quick one with the rainbows. And this is really good for you to do before you go to sleep at night. It's really a good one, because then you focus on it, and it's a good shamatha exercise. Translucent, clear, insubstantial, the 5-color rainbow light, and emanating it from it in all directions, bounded by the sphere in which you sit. You experience the pure, clear light. So focus on it.
because he didn't expect Malarobit to suddenly
No.
appear on the top of the mountain.
Sorry, I'll just mute everybody because otherwise we hear all your individual. So all of these exercises are really, really, really helpful. If you don't need them and if you feel you can be in the tuning in your nature mind, I'm just giving you a few of them, thanks Fee. But it's really important. You could do Vajrasattva, also breathing in and out. You could do Kunta Zangpo. You could do many, many different things with just getting yourself into, getting used to the nature of mind. And Kaylee, if you're still around, you can use this children, these exercises. Children will do it much better than adults will. They really, really will. And I think that's very, very important. So anybody want to say or ask? And we can go on to just a little bit before we go tonight. Are you all happy? How was
Mel,
Yes, please.
no, sorry, what I was aware of, particularly in the silence,
Yes.
and also looking at the images, is a vibration. I can't tell you if it had a sound or a movement, but there was a vibration, very definitely.
Very definitely. And especially when you do the sound. That inner sound is amazing. But you see, we live our whole life externally, don't we? So these exercises are designed by great masters so that we can do them just to help us to tune in. And the vibration is very important. And what some of you won't realize, which is so good you bring that up, is that if you do these on a regular basis, if you do this on a regular basis, okay, eventually it starts breaking through. Do you know what I mean? So don't give up doing it because nothing really happened for you. I mean, I did hums for months on end. Hum, hum. And then eventually when I did these hums, things started to loosen up. Everything became impermanent. Everything became loose and I could direct the hum at everything. And you know what I found very interesting was that if somebody had really annoyed me, I would sometimes do a hum to actually de-solidify them so that I couldn't see that they were so solid in my life and so, you know, such a thing that you've done to me. It changes everything. So these exercises are really, really, really good. And then what I'll do with you is we'll go on to another topic next week when we do it. But what I will do with you is I will bring in some of the exercises to practice for meditation, because I really, really think that they are very important. And I think that when you say the vibration, I'm absolutely delighted. And the other thing that is extremely important before we go, and that comes into the view, is something, I just want to get the page, hang on a moment, something which is called gaze at the freshness. This is not a Zen, but if you remember last week, I was telling you about Tulku Urgent's shamatha and his vipassana. And in that, there was the practice of Nalbab and Shoshuk. Now, Nalbab is resting, and Shoshuk is actually refreshing. And, you know, I think that this is really important, the refreshing, making things fresh, because I think that a lot of the times we get bored and we get disinterested in the practice and we sit for long and we're not enjoying it. I know myself, sometimes when I do a Vajrayana practice, I just, you know, like last night I went and decided to do my tour, which I haven't done for a long time. And because I was doing it new and it wasn't as familiar as it was before, it was very exciting. But when you repeat something over and over and over again, it can become very dull. And so the instruction is gaze at the freshness. Now, what it says is to put all of this in a nutshell, whatever the quality of the view, no matter whether we are happy or sad, or whether appearances are fearful or pleasant, regardless of whether mind is active or passive, our mind is not tilting towards any antidote. So we're not getting rid of anything. We're not finding an antidote. When we're hating, we're not finding the antidote love. We're just refreshing. And what happens is, whatever appears, we look nakedly at its essence as it arises, and without modifying it in any way, it is as it is. And pure presence in all its radiance is arising from within. So in his mountain retreat, Alchemy of Realization, this is what Dajjom Rinpoche says. He says, whatever the sensory field, whatever the object, we are gazing at it like a child enwrapped before an altar in a temple. We are not clutching at the sensory specifics. We hold on to the freshness. So when a child comes into a place, they see lots of colors. When they're a young child, they don't go, why is this, and why is that, and what is this? They just see it in a refreshing way. And he says, we let it be in its own place without contriving anything about it. Not with saying, I like it, I don't like it, it doesn't do anything for me, just allowing it. We don't want to change its shape. We don't want to change its complexion. We don't want to adulterate it with any conceptual fiction. All appearances are arising as the naked primal awareness of clarity and emptiness in pure presence. Now, it is very difficult to do that. But when you practice some of these senzins and some of these things that we've been doing over the weeks, the non-meditation, the moving it into your daily life in a completely aware way, we start to be refreshed. And if you are doing a practice, and if you are getting bored or restless, or your mind is wandering, you need to refresh. How do you refresh? You look at it in a different way. You step back from it. You allow it to be without your perception of this is boring, this is interesting, this is anything. You look at it and you see it as a pure form. Even an angry person is a pure form, but we can't see it. So we stand back and we allow that pure form to manifest before our eyes, and we are then a child freshly and freshness. And what I find so important, everybody, we're going to end now, is that, you know, when I'm looking at a person, and when I find that that person is really going off the beaten track, so I really find that person hasn't got it, doesn't understand it, is absolutely hanging on to what they want to hang on to, then I refresh myself. Instead of judging them, I put that shorshuk thing in. I try to stand back and not look at them through my eyes, but see them for what they are, how they feel, what they do. And it makes a really, really, really great difference, because you're not doing it with your own interpretation and your own human intervention. So I really hope that this is useful for you, and that, you know, you can take something out of it. And I would have liked a little more with Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, but I can see he's really tired at night, you know. So it's not a great time to get him. It's not a great time. It's better to do in the morning if I do with him. But if you listen carefully and ponder the words that he said, they are amazing. He said, center yourself, allow things to be, stop seeing them as solid. And I've seen him do this in practice. And it comes from all his years of practice and really doing things in a particular way. So I'll answer anything anybody wants to say, but let's dedicate tonight. And really, let's dedicate. There are so many people in the world suffering. There are children dying in Pakistan of cholera. It's just really horrific. In Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Iran, they're having protests, and I think they're quite right. In Russia, in Ukraine, everywhere. We really dedicate all of this for people to know it's all impermanent, it's all transient. There's no I. If you lose your life, it's going on. It's not just one life. And if people can understand this, we dedicate that merit. And through this merit, may we achieve all seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane, topne nepe dranam tamshene, jegana chi balap dopaye, sipe sole buado warsho.